myopia management is becoming the standard of care in eye care practice today. And when you incorporate orthokeratology into your practice, you not only slow down the progression of myopia, but you also allow your patients not to have to wear a correction during the day. In Myopia Workshop, Moving Orthokeratology Forward in 2022, you'll learn how to evaluate, how to fit, and how to successfully incorporate orthokeratology in your practice from two of the experts in the field, Patrick Caroline and Randy Kojima. See you at Orthokeratology in 2022.
Okay, we're ready to rock and roll here, everyone. Welcome. Is the mic on?
Yep.
Good. Hey, fasten your seatbelts because this is going to be kind of a action-packed hour and a half or 2 hours, whenever we go, because we got some new stuff to share with you today about orthokeratology and moving this modality forward in 2022. What we're going to see are some new thoughts, new understandings of the modality, and I think you're going to enjoy elements of this. We're going to just start off by giving you our disclosures. Not much there to disclose, especially on my end, but let's take a look at what we've learned in the last 3 years related to this topic of myopia, because as you know, it's been absolutely insane following the data and trying to decipher and distill what it's all trying to tell us. First, we have to go back centuries, and that is to the lifelong debate of how much of myopia is genetic and how much of a child's myopia is actually influenced by the environment that they find themselves in. And this has always been kind of a pretty fundamental question that's been kind of confusing for us. How do we communicate these percentages to parents? Well, Monica Jung at the Brian Holden Institute recently put some numbers to this. They put together an exhaustive protocol to try to distill how much of a child's myopia is genetic and how much of it is going to be determined by the environment. I don't know if my mic is on. I can't tell. I talk so darn loud.
He sounds so good from the front.
This is what happens when you have 6 kids. I'm not even listening to myself. Okay, back to topic on hand. Hey, that sounds better. These were the numbers that they came up with. Now, these are actually numbers that we can really tell parents that 30% of the child's myopia today is going to be driven by genetics. And believe it or not, 70% is really going to be environmentally or optically modifiable. Now, if these numbers are actually correct, that means we got a lot of territory to play in. Our playground is pretty darn big. And we can have a pretty big influence if we can figure out how to get the most out of our environmental issues and the most out of our optical issues. Now, the other thing we've learned over the past 3 years is that not all myopia is equal. Now, this is something we really, truly now believe. The data is really, really crystal clear here that these early onset myopes are the ones we have to take aggressive action towards. That it's definitely, in most patients, an age-related phenomenon. the younger the myopia occurs in a child's upbringing, the stronger the chance of them becoming high myopes in the future. The numbers of you here are really impressive. This is 2020 data, and they found in a large cohort of Chinese children that these younger myopes had a strong propensity for becoming high myopes greater than -6. And when you look at those numbers with age, you see some pretty amazing things. That every year that number goes down and down as far as will they become high myopes. So it seems for you and I in clinical practice, all of our efforts really have to be directed towards that pre-myopia group, 7 and 8. We have to detect those children at a very early age and begin our intervention therapies. Now, this I found really interesting in Hugh's data. That is the spherical equivalent as it's related to age on the bottom and axial length. Well, no big surprise there in the data, in the fact that as a child became more myopic with their spherical refractive error, their axial length naturally increased. So there's a pretty direct correlation. Now that wasn't the important part of the study. The important part for me as a clinician was this slide right here. And what this is the individual variability in myopia. You see, what's being reported today are single dots. Those are averages. And in clinical practice, averages mean nothing to that 7-year-old sitting in front of me. That 7-year-old's path towards myopia and high myopia is going to be very dramatically. So the trends are important, but the individual patient is far more important. That is why we need to approach evidence-based numbers very carefully today. We need to stop thinking about what the average kid does. And we need to start focusing on the individual child. You see, today, we just don't have good data as to what's going to happen with that individual child. The variations in the population are just simply too great. So this has changed everything we do at Pacific. Are there studies we can look at? Yeah, there are studies and they show trends. But again, it's meaningless data to that 7-year-old sitting in front of me whose path through myopia is going to be an individual road that they are going to travel. When we look at the data from our industry, whether it's MySight multifocal data, whether it's Orthokeratology data, you'll notice that what's missing in there? Error bars, variations, aberrations in the data. We're looking at averages, a single point average. Now, that was really brought in crystal clear focus in my mind in a study we did a number of years ago on 191 children from Eddie Chow's practice in Toronto. When we analyzed Eddie's data, his orthokeratology data, on 191 randomly selected eyes through propensity analysis, we saw that when a 6mm standard orthokeratology lens is applied to the eye, some of the kids in green did really good. That 50% that do well with orthokeratology. Now, what about those kids in the red? These are the kids that keep me up at night. These are the kids that are failing with orthokeratology, but when we average them together with the group that's doing good, boom, we got 50%. Now, 50% is good for you in clinical practice. God bless you. Just keep doing what you're doing. But my question is can I do better than that? Are there things that we can do as a community to actually take that 50% reduction and actually further enhance it? That's where we're at right now. And what that means is we have to start treating every myopia control patient as a study of one, an N of one. And that is the direction I believe we need to go. As was mentioned yesterday in the general session, man, have we got a toolbox. We've got some incredible tools that we can use to modify these optics, modify the environment for our children, and we need every single one of them. The idea that you're going to practice myopia control with one modality only, that's just not going to work for the diversity of children that we're seeing today in practice. So we need every single tool to really manage these individuals well in practice. Now, what that means is we have to rethink the way we're managing myopia, and we have to think about it similar to what you do in practice with your glaucoma patients. Now, when a glaucoma patient comes in, you're going to base your therapy on a number of observations. One, of course, is intraocular pressure. You're going to look at visual fields, and you're going to perform OCT. That is how you monitor and modulate the treatment therapy for that individual glaucoma patient. The same thing is true with myopia control. We have to modulate our treatment based not on refractive error, but on axial length. I think perhaps one of the greatest quotes to stick with me throughout the years was one from the great Earl Smith, the father of myopia, at least for me. He said that myopia is not a condition of refractive error. It is a condition of axial length. And that becomes important now for you and I, because this is our OCT. This is how we are going to monitor our therapy that we provide to the child. Is the eye growing longer? Not are they becoming more myopic, is the eye growing longer? Why axial lengths over refractive error? Well, axial lengths have a strong relationship to ocular complications. We know that when we have a steep cornea, that it's going to influence the amount of myopia that the child has. Now, is that going to affect their long-term retinal situation, the steepness of their cornea? Of course it's not. They're totally independent. The one thing that is true is axial length becomes the yardstick by which we're going to monitor this. We can measure it with much greater accuracy than we can refraction, especially in a 5 to 7 year old child. Remember, that's the cohort.